Hey guys, hey, this is Anne Marie at the AntiHR channel, and I'm super excited to share with you my AntiHR 2024-2025 reading list. This is something that I promised that I was going to put together, and I took some time to really think about and research book titles, and I've put together a reading list. It is a downloadable, printable Google Doc with links of books that I think, 30 titles that I think every Black person should read. And I hope you guys will find it helpful. I hope you will make an effort to read those books. I mean, some of you are in book clubs and so on, so maybe you can recommend some of these books for your book clubs to read. If you use the affiliate link, I would greatly appreciate it. And I've provided those on the list. Some of the titles include books that I have read more than once and that I really, really love. And others are book titles that I researched that I think are important books for all of us to read and that I have put on my list of books to read. I always try to read a book when I'm flying somewhere or listen to a Audible book when I'm flying somewhere. Now that I'm cutting ties, I have to figure out a replacement for Audible. So if you guys have recommendations for that, please put that in the chat or in the comments. Someone sent me an email. Let me just check the email because she had made a very interesting observation that I wanted to share because I didn't know about this. I thought it was great. And let me see if I can find it real quick. But someone had emailed me and made some suggestions and also indicated that there was an app for the library that you could use to access books, which I think I'd heard about this before, but I've not used it, but I am going to download that app. Here we go. Found it. So she said that there is an app called Hoopla and Libby. If you have a library card, and this is in the United States, if you have a library card, then you can borrow a book using Hoopla or Libby. So when I get back to the States for my next visit for Thanksgiving, I'm going to go to the library and get my library card so that I can use this. And I'm assuming you can also get Audible books because I like to listen to Audible books. So this is not an exhaustive list. And I'm sure y'all gonna be in the comments telling me all the books that should be on the list. Please don't. If you have a recommendation of an additional book, please give it. But please don't tell me, oh, you should put this and you should put that. I put the books on the list that I wanted to have on the list. And I will be probably doing this annually. And so if you want to make other recommendations for other books, that's great. Please drop them in the comments with this video so everyone can put those books on their list. I think reading is very important. So it's not just the books on my list, but this is my list, curated list that I put together. And it's only 30 titles, so it could not possibly be exhaustive. But for me, these are books that have been very important for me in my life. The number one book I will tell you right now is the autobiography of Malcolm X. There is no list that I will ever give anyone and not include that book at the top of the list because it changed my life. It changed myself of who I was when I read it when I was about 23, I think. I was 23 years old, I think, the first time I read it. And it's the first adult book I ever gave my son to read. So it's a very important book, and I think every Black person should read that book. I also think it's important to read Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. So that book is on the list as well. I also think it is also important to read Things Fall Apart. I can never pronounce the author's name very well, so I won't try, but it is on the list. But there, as I said, many other book titles on that list because I think it's important to have a well-rounded list. Some of the books are history books that are books about the history of, for example, I have the book that was written by the Queen of Hawaii from her prison cell when she was being detained by the U.S. government right after they took over deposed her and took over the island of Hawaii. How many of you know that the U.S. government did that? I think it's important to read that book. I remember when I went to Hawaii and I couldn't understand some of the dynamics of what I was seeing between the natives and the inhabitants of the island. So I went to a bookstore and I went and bought some books about the history of the country and read them on the airplane back home. And then I understood. And that was one of the books, even though I have no idea what I did with it when I moved. I know I have it somewhere in a box somewhere. I highly recommend reading that book. I think it's important for us not to just understand ourselves as Black people and those of us who are Black Americans, but to also understand yourself in the context of the diaspora and to understand yourself in the context of all people of color, right? And the impact of white supremacy, colonialism on people of color everywhere in the world, because it shows up in our interactions with them in America, as well as their interactions with us and our interactions with each other, right? So I think it's important to read those books. So I've added books on the list that speak to actual history of places like Mexico and Puerto Rico and Hawaii and the continent of Africa. And also, and most importantly, the rise and fall of the Third Reich in Germany. Because what is unfolding in America, I think it is very important to read and understand history and the alarms that so many of us have been trying to raise because we have read history. And too many Americans feel they know what happened in the 1930s and 1940s and what caused World War II. Many Americans think World War II was primarily about the Japanese attacking America. Was not, right? But the Japanese had allied themselves with Germany, with Nazi Germany, as well as the Italians, right? It's important to understand history, to understand why what is happening now is just history repeating, and how far it goes is going to be dependent on us, right? Because I see people making videos saying, oh, they can't possibly deport these people because it's going to cost all this money and they will have to keep all these people in these places. There are other things that people can do to reach an end that are not very pleasant. And I think too many Americans have a lack of imagination and really believe that the government is not incapable of certain things. But if you understand history and you understand the things that the American government has already done in other places, your imagination will expand. Okay? So I suggest that we read books. If you can get through this list, that would be amazing, but at least start. And don't just read the book titles that are about, Black American history, and there are lots of books about Black American history, Black American experience that are on the list, right? Because I think these things are important as well. And some of them are just favorite titles of mine, like Zora Neale Hurston, Their Eyes Were Watching God. But it's also important to understand history from the perspective of many of those who have come to America and contributed to America, right? And with whom white supremacy has pitted them against us and us against them. And I think it's important to understand what is going on around you, right? With an intelligent eye and with critical thinking, right? Not just what you saw on the TikTok. So I hope that this list will help contribute to education. And so I do encourage you to drop books in the comments that you also recommend that people consider and add to their list. You can take my list and start your own list and add additional books from the comments onto your list, and just kind of try to read a book. Try to read a book a month. That's a goal that I'm trying to set for the new year, is to try to read a new book once a month. Like grab a book that I haven't read and read it. Some of these books are being banned. So there might come a time when you might not be able to find them in the library. So Christmas holidays are coming up. If you celebrate Christmas, a book is a great gift to give to your child, a young adult. Some of these books are probably not for children, but young adults. I would say starting at 13 years old, I started giving my son books, because my mother started giving me books when I was 9. My mother gave me Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee to read when I was 9 years old, 9.5 years old. She gave it to me and I read it, and I understood most of what I read. It was very upsetting, but I read it. And I grew up around books, and I'm very grateful for that, because I realize a lot of people don't grow up around books. I had books all around me. Both of my parents are college educated people. My mother got her master's degree while I was a child. So she had a lot of these books around, and she gave them to me. Souls on Ice and The Wretched of the Earth, which is another book that is on this list, were books that were in my house. when I was a child. So everyone doesn't have the benefit of that as a child. So as an adult, you do have the choice, though, to benefit yourself by reading and engaging in critical thinking as you read. And reading helps to build your critical thinking. So I highly recommend that you take a look at the book list. It is linked to this video. And I also wrote a blog post, which is linked. The list is linked to my blog post, and the blog post is linked to this video. So you can read the blog post, get access to the list. I will also be posting the list in the YouTube community. So you'll be able to get it that way as well. I really do hope that you will find it educational and helpful. And as the holidays are coming around, maybe go buy some of those books using the link that I gave you. Buy a gift, buy it as a gift for someone you love. Buy it as a gift for your kids, if your kids are, teenagers or older. I think one of the biggest challenges we have as a community is that our young people don't read books. And so I think it's really important to encourage your kids to read books, not just get their information from YouTube and TikTok, but to actually go to the library and read books. So I hope that this list will encourage us to do that. If many of us, and I can tell many of us in this community are readers and have already made suggestions about books. So you can drop those suggestions again in the comments to this video. And then folks can start, creating their own list of books and adding those books to the list. But please, be constructive in your comments, make suggestions, do not talk down to people, do not be respectful. Just because someone may not have the knowledge that you have doesn't mean that you're smarter, better, or faster, including myself. You just may have more information right now. So share the information that you have by commenting and suggesting, hey, let's add this book to the list, or I read this book and it was great. Let's add that book to the list, and just make suggestions. And I will be grabbing the books from the comments and adding them to a master list for myself. And I hope other people will do the same thing as well. So I hope that this was helpful. I hope to do another book list maybe around the same time next year, God willing. But as I said, some of these books may not be easy to find depending on where you live, because in many states they are banning books left and right under the guise of protecting their children. But really it's about not wanting people to have information and not wanting people to take critical looks at themselves and their history. And people without a history can be easily manipulated. And we're seeing it right now. People who don't know their history, don't understand the history of their own country, don't understand the history of themselves, are easily manipulated. So I would really like us as a community not to be easily manipulated. And knowledge is power. So while you can get access to these books, read them. If you can buy some of the titles, buy them. Some of these books you can even find secondhand certain places. So, try to own as many of them as you can and borrow those that you can't, if you can't buy everything. I know Target is having a sale right now on a lot of books. So now's a good time to buy books. We're coming up on the holiday season, and some of these books you can get for less than $10 each. So paperback. So keep that in mind as well. Hope this is helpful. I enjoy putting the list together. So thank you to those of you who made the suggestion that I put the list together. I enjoy putting it together, and I hope you find it helpful. See you guys in the next video. Bye.